Hello, I'm Gemma Star, and welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. This is a series I've been inspired and guided to do thanks to my connection with Katajuda, which is the sacred masculine site in Central Australia, very close to Uluru, which is the sacred feminine site in Central Australia. I do a lot of work with both those energies to bring in the masculine and feminine unity. And what I've been asked to do is to provide a platform for men to talk man to man, heart to heart, mind to mind, experience to experience. And because our men need to hear it from other men as they step their warrior path into the heart and feel into what is masculinity, what is a man in the 5D energies. What is a man who integrates his mind and his heart? So it's my greatest pleasure today to welcome a man called Dr. Paul. He's a sociologist, and I know we're going to touch on one of my very favorite subjects, something I'm really passionate about. So I can't wait to get into that. Enjoy the show. Hello, Dr. Paul. Welcome to Heart Warriors.
Hello, Gemma. It's a pleasure to be here. It always blows my mind. So here it's moving into the later evening, and there it's the AM, right? And so
it's Saturday, 12 o'clock. So yeah, sun's shining. We're on a whole new day. So the world's still here. So that's the main thing.
So profound. Yeah, you're in the future, and it's always intriguing, like recording this, right? So it's like good morning, good afternoon, whatever whatever place and time in the future you're listening to this. We hope that there's some value here.
And that just to touch on quickly, that just really shows the only time is now, isn't it? We're here connecting on now time. It doesn't matter what time it is with you in the States. It doesn't matter what time it is here in Australia. It's now, and we're, one-to-one connecting. So it just really puts that into perspective.
And it's kind of mind-blowing. I just like thinking about the notion of like what a podcast is, and thinking about like the historic notion of like a time capsule, right? In ways, shapes, and forms, these are little time capsules that someone will listen to. And I love listening to these old recordings of Alan Watts, and listening to his perspective from the 1970s and 60s, and these folks, and so here we are in 2022. It's like, whoa, okay, we're gonna leave this. And so someone's going to hear this in 2 days from now, or 20 years from now, or more, and everywhere in between. And so it's just the profound notion, this idea of time and space, right?
Exactly. Amazing. I'm not sure if you know Katajuda, the rock formation behind me. That's the sacred masculine site in Central Australia, close to Uluru. So that's the energy that's coming through for these shows, as I mentioned in my intro. So you're aware of that energy that's also coming through your screen and the screen of everyone else. Paul, let's get Dr. Paul, sorry. Dr. Paul, can you please give us an insight into who you are today as a man, and then we'll jump back and see how you got here.
Wow. who am I today? It's kind of hard thinking about who I was yesterday. And who I was like last week when we were talking about doing this, or a week and a half ago when we were talking about doing this, and thinking about the flood of ideas, and then moving to today, and it feels like a lifetime ago. And even just from this morning waking up, and until now, and all of the miles that were traversed, and so trying to get into like who I am, the title that we give ourselves, right? So I'm a sociologist, and in American culture and society, there's a lot of stock placed in like our identity and our occupation, right? So when people hear doctor, they're like, they think medical doctor immediately. So, I have a PhD, doctorate in philosophy. I'm a sociologist. I studied women's studies along the way. So I have a specialization in gender and women in work. And I think, I'm a knowledge seeker and always have been. And that's I'm working on a new book right now, and it's kind of in the motivational self-help area. And so that idea of like being a constant learner, like, was like moments before coming here. And so the humility in that, I don't know everything. And so if, like, people hear doctor and like, I assert that in a humble fashion. I may have a degree and a credential, but I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly growing. And so I got involved in a yogic practice, approximately 7.5 years ago. And as soon as I started, it was like, what more can I learn? And I think, like, I was always athletic, but I found yoga to be the most humbling, even above like contest athletics, where there actually is a win and a loss. I find more in just a 50-minute yoga practice, hot yoga, power yoga practice, than I do when I was going out on the mat and going head to head, and whether I won or lost at the end of a yoga practice. I feel like I more things come rushing and flooding, rather than just that. And talk about a masculine thing, like wrestling, or American football, or any type of, you know aggressive athletic contest, where that's the goal, is to win. Where within the context of yoga, there is no winning. There is no contest. It's against yourself. It's that you versus you thing. And I think that, that every day, I'm constantly shaping and reshaping my own identity, and finding that humility, like, what and where and how can I grow, right? What did I achieve, or what was successful, and what was not so successful.
Yeah.
I think similar to that yoga practice is being a parent as well, right? And every day is a new endeavor and challenge, and finding, well, I think every good parent, it's like, whoa, I feel like I'm a failure. And no, you're not. You got through the day. Everyone is safe. Everyone,
Yeah.
is asleep. Everyone is healthy, and
Mm.
and now we're gonna do our best again the next day. So, my credentials and my knowledge, and it's constantly growing. And so, like hobbies, I try to pick up something new and do something new, and keep things fresh, and set new goals. And so that's, like, this book came out, and part of that book was like, the idea for it was almost a half a decade ago. I had the idea for that book, and then I published two other books on the way to and journey to this particular book, and to this
Okay.
particular podcast, right? And so, thinking about, where, that was like yesterday, was like, and the day before was like, how far, like, an image came up from, 2012 in 2015 or something, and I was like, wow, like, how much has my life changed in that 7 years,
Okay, can
and
we
my
go back now
world.
and see and unpack this a little bit, because you got
Yeah,
lots of things that I want to go back and get into a bit
absolutely.
deeper. Um, well, let's start on the yoga, because you're passionate about yoga. I am so passionate about yoga, especially the Bikram yoga, which I've been doing for 20 years. And I will always say is the number one tool that got me to the woman I am today. And I love the Bikram yoga because it's done in a hot room. Now it's often called hot yoga. and it's a set sequence of 26 postures and 2 breathing exercises. So once you know the sequence, you can sort of step back and really get into that meditation at the same time and just work through the sequence. Okay, so I've got a few questions. I just wanted to give that background to people, but I've got a few questions for you, Dr. Paul. One, I want to touch on something that I heard in the last year as I've sort of circled back into the truther movement. And the subject of religion has come up a lot. Now, I think you guys over there in the States are much more deeply into your religious stuff than we are here in Australia. But I've heard a couple of times that some people consider yoga to be satanic. What do you say to that?
That's interesting. I think what I've come across, and I think there is a well, number one, I'm Christian, right? And so America, like Judeo-Christian culture, we freedom of religion, like as a sociologist, right? We are primarily a Judeo-Christian culture, but we accept many different cultures and religion. But like what is touted and what do you see kind of everywhere you look, in a sense, right? And so there are mosques and synagogues and churches and so on and so forth. And so for me, Christianity was my base, and I don't think I ever left. Some people are like, many people I've met, like they grew up Catholic and they just packed it up and put it away. Like I don't think I ever put my religion away. I think it's kind of like the growth cycles that we go through. And so for me, it was like, now I'm back to this huge return over the past few years, getting deeper and deeper into my faith. And so some folks that are like religious kind of extremists will see anything that is non-Christian, right? Or whether it's whatever it is, like if you're extremist, whatever, you're going to say that is antithetical to who we are, and whether they say it's satanic or just not right or not okay, right? And so as sociologists, we say we don't make value judgments, right? We just want to analyze and understand. So I put I put yoga into the exercise category, right? So Bikram was what I did all through the whole COVID. Like when everything shut down, I never stopped my yogic practice. I actually got deeper into it. So I was doing Bikram yoga every single day. And
Mhm.
so prior to that, and going back to when I first started yoga, like yoga, I always tell people yoga saved my life. Not like I was like, in the pits or suffering from some sort of ailment or depression or anything like that. It didn't save me in that way, shape, or form, but it changed how I looked at the world, how I reacted. It changed it, like after my first yoga class, like I was ready to go out. I was taking myself out to eat. I knew that after I went to the gym and did this yoga, whatever it was, I had no idea what I was in for. I was like gonna go out and I was just gonna like buy myself a huge meal, and all I wanted was a salad for whatever reason. Like that was it.
Yeah.
And so I find it so grounding, emotionally and spiritually and physically. And talking about being a man, like this idea, like I had like my testosterone literally is off the charts. Like when I went to the doctor, go for a physical. They're like, yeah, your testosterone's as high as it could possibly be, -5 or whatever it is. And so I have that, right? And so yoga brings me down. Yoga brings me to like an even keel, and a different way of approaching, rather than that, like, that how we're taught and socialized as men to be. And so that's like understanding, like, having a master's in women's studies and understanding gender, and what kind of what we call hegemonic masculinity is, right? And that being strong, that being aggressive, that being assertive, or the things that, people say if women are, then they're right, they're being bitch, or they're right. If a woman is assertive, it's like then she's pushy or whatever it is, right? And so that whole, you know, socialized masculinity, it's always there. It doesn't go away. And so I feel like that yoga shifts us into a place and a space of balance, right? And
Yeah.
so whether it's a biological balance or even a sociological balance, it's a perspective. So getting kind of back to the idea of religion. So I've met some folks along this like yogic path who are very Christian. And so when I meet someone and they're like, wow, you're Christian too, it's so nice to meet a Christian who does yoga, right? And so I think that it's kind of it's an interesting thing. And so I feel when someone says that they're making a value judgment, right? And I think that if you think of like Christ consciousness and what that espouses, right, there is and are no value judgments.
Mm.
And even, that, those notions. And so, there are so many tenets of other religions that I've analyzed and I've looked at, like the Tao, and and listening to lectures and reading books from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and rest his soul Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist who recently passed away. That those I consider those folks my mentors and spiritual guides as well, and as well as folks like, Ram Dass and other people who would say, whoa, those, from extremist positions, they would say those folks are antithetical to anything,
Okay.
right, Christian.
Yeah.
And so I'm open to looking at it. And so if you look at like, I became, and that idea of growth, like, so I'm a certified, did a 200-hour yoga teacher training.
Mm.
And so I had previously, years like in 2015, had read the Bhagavad Gita, and actually listened to it on tape. And so I revisited that during that training. And it's so interesting to look at that religious text and then knowing the Bible and seeing so many parallels in the parables and the stories, and knowing a lot of talk about, indigenous folks, and thinking about and knowing a lot of those stories, like the stories of some of the indigenous here in the Americas, that their creation stories are parallel a lot of the Christian creation stories,
Okay.
and
Mm.
those. So when you look across religion, kind of sui generis, you see so many parallels. And so
Mm.
that's kind of where I stand, in a position of kind of non-judgment,
Yeah.
and looking at it for like in a in kind of a Bruce Lee type way, like what can I take from those,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That I can benefit from. And so what I take from yoga is the physical fitness of it, right? And so to shout out like Bikram yoga, which has healed me. Like I had a lot of ailments prior to doing Bikram yoga, and during the course of that like year and a half of intense practice, even in a non-hot situation, my spine like extended and loosened. And I used to visit a chiropractor, and just like he kind of says in some of his, in his lectures and stuff, like, you do do this yoga, you don't need to see a chiropractor. A chiropractor is going to call you, and it's legitimate. It really did help me with a lot of those shoulder, neck, and lower back ailments that I was suffering from for quite a while. And yeah, so that's kind of the long answer to that particular question. And so yeah, yoga, I feel like just changed. I can't imagine where I don't think we would be
Oh,
talking, honestly,
same,
if
exactly the same. What do you say to people who say, "Oh, I'm not flexible"? Because that's what I hear. I say, "Oh," because when you know how much good it's done for, you know, you share the message, and the number one response is, "Oh, I'm not flexible." What do you say to men to get them into the hot room?
wow. I mean, it's it's like you have to it's like you have to start somewhere. Like everyone has a starting point. And I look at myself, I look at how my flexibility has changed and shifted. But at the same time, it's like it's so humbling that there are these certain areas that like I've avoided, that now it's like I have to address them if I want to, move my practice to the next level. Like I have to really work on some things that like literally I've been avoiding. And so I think with yoga, there's no you can't hide.
Mm.
And in American culture, I think in the quote unquote like Western world, we're always finding places to hide. And some people hide literally from themselves, right? And so I have to shout out like Louise Hay and some of those people who force us to face ourselves, right? That mirror work. As I'm looking at myself, I'm like, I love that guy and I want to do everything I can to, you know, cater to his longevity and his lifestyle and, my own deepest wants and desires. I want to fulfill those, before I exit and want to do service along the way because I feel like I have reached a point where and that's like why we're here in a sense, right? This is a giving back in ways, shapes, and forms. And so if there can be some utility, as we said in the start of this, I hope that someone out there finds value in it. And so with me, looking at those types of things and consistently trying to find ways that I can grow. And so when we get into the yoga room, you're there, there's a class, but it's you, right? And you have to face yourself. And so
In the mirror.
I yeah, and coming from that athletic background where it's a contest, like consistently in the class and it's kind of like lately too, like I'm like, "Whew," like Mate, I said it the other day in the class out loud, and I said it to myself, and that's like, in kind of martial arts, it's like, I give up. I like you got me. And so like in this power yoga class, like I was just that was it. That was it. So I feel that like you go to those and you can't hide. And it's similar to how in like the world of wrestling, I think in grappling and those types of things where it's you versus an opponent. Like you can't hide behind 10 other guys or six other guys and whatever the athletic contest is, and when it's just you versus an opponent. And so yoga gets rid of that opponent and just places you there, and now it's just you versus who you are now,
Yeah.
right? And for me, it's like, yeah, it's like I've come a long way and I have a fantastic practice and people have told me, but at the same time, I know where I need improvement and what I have to work on. And so I was
Okay.
working on it yesterday
Yeah.
and I told my instructor yesterday, my girlfriend, who I was just like, I was like, we're going to hit some of this. And at the same time, I was like, why did I even say that I wanted to do that? Because it was like suffering. And as Bikram would say, like, suffering is good. It means that, like, that's why you're here. Like that, he said, like, that's why you're paying me, right? So, you're going to suffer for 90 minutes or you're going to suffer for 90 years. And
Yeah.
so I look at people who are my age
Mm.
that are suffering in many different ways, that look a whole heck of a lot older than I am. Like, I looked at a picture of my own father, right? Who at my age right now looks 20 years older. Like a
Yeah.
picture of like him at my wedding, 20 plus years ago. And it was like, whoa,
Hmm.
like that, like I look at it like that could have been me
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
would have followed and taken that path, right? And I found myself at one point feeling like I was falling into that kind of settling rut. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I'm not happy with what I see. And that's when I did an unlimited, like a gym membership, a year gym at one of the biggest local gyms here, kind of like the YMCA, but privately owned. And that I was like, that's it. I'm going to the gym regularly. And that's when I found yoga at that gym, and my fantastic instructor there, who just changed the way that I look at the world, my life, and just everything. Like every angle of everything is has been shifted.
Okay, that's great. I know you've got so much experience on many things, so we'll probably, even though we love yoga, we'll have to wrap up the yoga. Do you want to
But
take
with
us?
yoga, let me just like just just take a class. Just take a class and you just do what you can do, right? And that's the only thing, like shout out to Bikram, but like I always tell people, do the videos, but don't kill yourself. Push it almost there. Don't go 100%. Go like 92%, because you don't want to hurt yourself, because you can. And so that's some of the things too. Like when people get into this yoga and it's like they think it's handstands and everything. And even myself, and like I'll get a wrist injury doing something or a shoulder injury. And I'm like, you that's not what it's about. That's our ego stepping in. So you go in, you just go in there and you start to work this body that you were blessed with.
Beautiful. Okay. What would you say was your lowest point in your teenage years? What was the most difficult thing you had to overcome in your teenage years?
Something I just wrote about a couple of days ago, not about me personally, but it was not having, not really, not that I didn't love myself, but it's like I looked at other people and what they had and who they were and what they were doing, and I wanted to like be those people. And I wanted to, I think like in our adolescence, that's kind of, we don't have our real personal and self identity. So I was, like most teenagers, an emulator. And and even getting to like going to college, like I was like, and I tell people, like, and this is the thing, like you can shape and reshape yourself every day. You can decide who you want to be like tomorrow. You don't have to be the same person you were, right, yesterday. And so when I went to college, it was like I just became a hyper version of who I thought I wanted and should be
And
as
what was
a
that? What
man
was that, Dr. Paul? What
in
person
our
did you
society and
think you
culture. I think it
should
was it
be?
was just this hyper masculine person. This, and was like gym. It was kind of like that Jersey Shore esque before there was the Jersey Shore. It was like the gym tan laundry type thing, and I joined a social fraternity, you know, Delta Upsilon Fraternity International, and I was a frat boy, you know, and I I joined that particular fraternity because they were legitimately my friends. Like, I did not join the frat because they were the most socially popular frat that mixed with the most socially popular and quote unquote like hottest girls on campus. Like, that's not why I joined the social fraternity. And so but it still was that, like, that was what I thought the college experience should be,
Yeah.
right? And so I did it, but I had real and true friends that I'm still friends with today. And like that that idea of like going back to high school, like my lowest point was not was was kind of trying to be not someone. I don't think I ever was someone I it's really hard to explain. And I think I've always stood up for myself and and tried to be the best version of myself. But I think and I know, and since we're being honest and candid here, that I loathed myself somewhat. Like, there were things about like my body in a sense that I didn't like. Like, I felt inferior in some of those things. Like talking about Louise Hay, like some of those things where you're like, you know, oh, like I should look like this guy on this show, or my life should be this way, and I should be driving this particular car or be doing this thing, and so I think, you know, I was kind of looking for love in all the wrong places, right? And I was looking for myself in the wrong places too. But I think these are all things that we fumble over. And so I always say that I was responsibly irresponsible, and I never strayed too far away from who I was, you
Would
know,
you
and
say it
so
was low self-worth? Would that be a way of describing it?
I think in ways, shapes, and forms it was, and I consider myself very blessed and lucky that, again, that in my adolescent in my adolescent you know tribulations and transgressions, that I was kind of divinely protected from, you know, from catastrophe. Like, looking back, I was like, like, thank God that there that some of those situations and circumstances that I put myself in weren't more serious than they could have been. The same at
So,
college. And so
uh,
that
sorry, I've always got like 10 questions for every
yeah.
segment that you go through. So, I mean, feelings of lack of self-worth, I think, are quite normal for all teenagers, and while we're finding our identity and our place in society. Um, what did you do to overcome those? Looking at the man you are today, what mind shifts or tools or practices would you recommend for people who are feeling this state of low self-worth?
I have to say yoga, I have to say meditation, you know, I have to say good nutrition, and also abstinence from, any sort of intoxicant, um, would be ways to get in touch with who you are and your identity. And I think a lot of folks, again, will not do yoga because they want to hide from themselves, or not want to get fit because it's a way of hiding from themselves. And um like like again, like I knew who I was. I kind of had a, I want to say minor esteem issues, like that it didn't drive me to like to kind of social isolation. Like I did my best. Like I pushed myself into places and rose above some of the negative stigma that, that kind of surrounded me, so to speak. And again, then I changed my place. Like I went from my hometown, away to school
Mm.
to grow,
Yeah.
and that's kind of in like this book that I'm working on. Like that's a big thing. It takes a lot of courage, right, to go away or to say no or to make a decision to change and to do something different and to not follow the same patterns. So like for me, that's been that constant, and thinking about like my lowest, like one of my lowest points, kind of think, I thought about that, because we kind of mentioned that in a little talk that we had, but that, like, divorce, I think, was probably the lowest, and not like that the lowest point of myself, but like talk about the end of something big, like the end of your whole world as you know it. Your social network gets shattered, your identity gets shattered, right?
So how long
Socially,
ago was
sociologically.
this? How long ago was this, Dr. Paul? So we can get an
That
idea.
was 12 years ago. Yeah, 12 plus years ago. And there was some stuff leading up to it, but it happened pretty abruptly. And that was a big, and it was a huge thing. And it was a huge thing, and it still has static left, right? But even though you're out, there's still this like you're still part of that universe,
Yes.
in ways,
Yeah.
especially with children, right? And so
Mhm.
you're never wholly out of it, but you start to create your own universe after that. You reshape your identity. So that was a big shift for me. Um, but I had been on prior to that about a couple of years. That was like that again, that looking in the mirror, that going to the gym, and so health and wellness started there. But it wasn't until about 5 years after that I found yoga. Yoga found me. So I was in the
Okay.
gym, like lifting, but that was that. So that lowest point was probably that, looking back at a life shattering type of or changing thing, and then growing from there.
Okay, Dr. Paul, what would you say to a man who was at the point in his marriage where he was considering divorce, or a man who is currently going through divorce and having a really hard time? What would you say to those men?
I say to kind of everyone, do what you can do to save your marriage if you can, right? Because if you married someone, then you loved them like more than anything in the world at that point, and you somehow moved away from that, right? So, like for me, move like there was counseling, and there was trying, and there was attempting to work it out, and there were kind of irrevocable decisions that were made, that solidified decision to separate. And so, um if you can save it. And that when I talk to people, I say that's the first thing to do. But you also have to think about, like, you have to think about yourself, and that's getting back to that kind of honesty with you. It's like, you know do do you really still love that person? Or maybe it's yourself. Maybe you don't really love yourself. Like I heard this in a sermon, like TD Jakes said, um I never met a man who, like, battered his partner that didn't hate himself, right? And so is it part of, you know, who you are and your identity, and what are you contributing to that relationship that's causing it to,
Mm.
you know, unmesh? And my late friend who was a counselor, he was counseling a um, uh, kind of a big business person who was having some trouble maritally and relationally, and he said, "Are you investing as much time and energy into your relationship as you are in your business?" And so, are we investing the time and energy into our relationships? And you know, that whole, the grass is always greener on the other side, but are you watering your own grass, and are you manicuring it, and are you being a constant a gardener in your little
Yeah.
sphere and square, right?
Um,
So
Looking back, what would you say was the number one lesson you learned from marriage and the number one lesson you learned from divorce?
hmm. Well, that's a really difficult question. What did I learn? What did I learn in my marriage? I think I learned kind of what to do and what not to do, and how to be and how not to be. Um,
Would you like
and
to expand on that?
I I learned I learned a lot about myself in marriage counseling, and probably would have had a much more successful marriage had maybe counseling started earlier than it did. It was almost like it was too late. It was like a band-aid on a wound that needed surgery, right? And organs were already destroyed in a sense, and at
Mhm.
that point, right? And so trying to patch it up was difficult, but I know that I was open to understanding myself and the relationship, and I kind of did everything that particular counselor had asked of me, with regard to reading, in regard to practice, with regard to actions. And kind of at the end of the several months, he was like, I know your marriage didn't make it, but you're a totally different person than when you started. And he was like, I honestly didn't think that you would kind of listen and do what you did. And so I think that's kind of I had a long-term relationship that one of my books that was kind of written around that, and that was very similar to a divorce in a sense, and a similar type of thing where um things just got into that place where it was too late. Like, there was another universe was created here, and it just didn't work anymore. And so those, you know understanding, I think in this lifetime, I think we have to realize sometimes that things aren't forever,
Yeah,
right? And that
yeah,
there is a lesson and a message in those situations. And sometimes, you know, sometimes it's not always like your lesson. Like we can look and we could be like, what was it? Maybe it wasn't yours.
mhm,
That loss could be the other party's loss. And so, for me, I know that, like, we all are responsible in these. And so if we take personal responsibility, we take ownership, and we like I tell my children, we do our best. As long as we do our best, and we could say that we did, then at the end of the day, that's how I sleep well at night.
From your personal experience, and I know you also delve into this in your professional experience of gender studies, what, how would you describe um, aware masculinity, divine masculinity, sacred masculinity, healthy masculinity?
Yeah, it's a really, like, this is something that I've been kind of thinking about and working on, and I think once I finish this particular book that I'm working on, I'm going to get back to that project. Something I've been evaluating for well over a decade, and I've done some research looking at, well, what you want to learn about, like, especially like culture, like, look at what the media is telling us about it, right? And so I was looking at and analyzing, well, what is the media telling men about masculinity, right? And so it hasn't changed much, but what the media is telling men to be and how to be, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in relationship. Like, part of it does. And I think that's where we
Which
get into
part?
this
Let's get
new
into
the
the real
yeah,
details
exactly.
here, because
And so
this is,
that's
you're a professional, so let's get the real details. So when you say the media is saying this and this, can you go into a bit of depth and give us
yeah,
the
so, that whole tough, um that tough, strong, um that there's some of the things that are, like, courageous and, uh takes, doesn't take any crap from anybody, and those types of masculine, that that works in some social situations, right? But not all. It works in an athletic contest, and but it doesn't work in a relational context, right? And that's why there are these, these masculinity educators that go into, to talk to young men and even professional athletes about that, those types of, behaviors are inappropriate off the field, right? Like, so on the field, you're hitting and you're violent and you're aggressive, and that type of aggression doesn't work in a relationship. And
Okay, so what are the healthy masculine aspects of a relationship? Let's dig into that.
yeah, and I think that that's, um what the kind of what folks call the divine masculine. I think being in touch with that warrior nature, like, is important, right? And I feel that that in this, contemporary 21st century culture, that, that men may have pulled back, and the and embracing some of those suggestions, right? But in some ways, it's not. It, I call it like a tightrope. So we're walking this. It's a very tough tightrope. So, like, some of those things work in, like, the athletic field. They work in the business world. They work in a courtroom, but they don't work in your home with your partner and your spouse. They don't work with your children. They don't work in, out there in the neighborhood when you're dealing with your neighbor or something like that, right? And so, um we're kind of telling, we should be sensitive, and be in touch with our emotions, and I feel it, yes, like, that's it, like, having that both masculine feminine balance is really important. And but it's kind of tough, because there is this also shift on what what I feel in and around, um contemporary, women and femininity in ways, shapes, and forms. So, we're telling women, like, yeah, it is okay to be assertive, and it is okay to speak your mind, and it is okay to be strong, and all of those things. But at the same time, I feel like when, it's like when men are, it's frowned upon, and then when women are, it's applauded. And we need to that's not the that's like not the like the equality that I was fighting for, to kind of squelch men while raising women up. And I feel like it personally, I'm a heterosexual man. I'm a cisgender, you know, um, kind of what you see is what you get, biological man, male, heterosexual, present myself in that way. And you know, that like that hetero normative male, that's me. But I also am in touch with like my divine masculine side. And that's what I learned, I think, in, like my post divorce, was growing into that through those relationships. Like, what did I learn in the process of those relationships? Little aspects of what I wanted, needed, and desired in a partner, but also what about myself, and how can I grow to attract, or find and know who was going to work in my world, and being able to balance that, right? And so, you find that in that kind of, you know divine relationship, that it does go back and forth. It's a give and take. It's my cup is starting to get empty, and she fills it, and the same goes. I fill her cup, and sometimes, she asserts, and I joke, and that's the thing, like you tell me what to do, and all the time, and I tell you what to do, in a sense, or it's not, but it's not about that. Like, that's kind of the jokey way, but I think it's also, it's understanding and listening. And so, you know with relationship, and I think even if it's a same sex relationship, there is this necessity and need, and balance that partners have to have, an understanding,
The
to make
harmony of the masculine feminine. So because we
absolutely.
both men and women embody masculine and feminine energy, so it's that harmony. So however much percentage you are masculine, if I'm that much in my feminine, we're going to harmonize with each other, and it's never static. It's like a dance. That's how I understand it. So
That is exactly, and I just read something from one of my books, but Ram Dass talks about the dance, and I think
definitely.
that you
Yeah.
find that partner that you can dance with and grow with,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah,
think
sure.
something came up in a retreat that I was just on, and it was listen, 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 and how much are we really listening to our partner?
Mm.
Right? Like, are we really listening? Did we really listen that last time that we had a disagreement, right? And why did we have a disagreement? Well, maybe it was because I wasn't, like, as a man, like, I realized that even just the way that I was addressing something wasn't soft enough.
Mm.
And not just my tone, but also just just stepping back just a little bit from whatever it was, instead of getting so close, and allowing things to kind of just settle a little bit. Like, as a man, we want to solve the problem, want to fix it. And no, it's like, give it a little bit of time, give it a little bit of space, and let that silence kind of open up the channels, and the connection, before you say something, or and do something that will make the situation even worse, right? And that's kind of like the lesson from Buddhism,
Yeah.
right? And even some of the Um, some of the other kind of, uh, what do I call? I call them like the manifester suggestions, right? If you're, your emotional guidance and you're in some sort of, static space, it's like you got to let the static go away, get into a space of gratitude. Think about your partner, think about ways that they make you happy and, and thankful and getting to start thinking about the things that you like and love and adore about them, and then redress and see how small and minuscule that like, that little static, possibly and likely was.
That's really good advice. Um, so from your experience, what would you say was the number one quality that a healthy masculine energy can bring to a relationship? I mean, I was going to ask you for three. So if you want to touch on one, two, or three while in your conversation, but I'm interested what you would pick as your top qualities that a masculine can bring into a relationship.
I, th- and I think it goes. I think it really goes for like any partner. I think like number one, I think a relationship and a partner, like there has to be safety. There like safety, and so your partner should feel safe with you and around you, and I know for me, like that's so important and
Emotional
to a
safety
relationship.
for a
First,
man with a woman.
like personal safety, I think right, like that well, if we think about like right masculinity, be the protector, right? So as a man, it's like your partner should feel safe around you. But I'm thinking more in a sense of like when I go out into the world, like I'm a warrior, right? Or I'm a hunter and gatherer, or however, whatever sort of analogy you want to use in this, 21st century Bob Marley concrete jungle. When I come home, I don't want to go to war anymore. I want to come home and I want to like put my spear down and and really truly and completely be me and feel safe,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that goes along with the idea of like knowing exactly who you are, right? And being
So
honest with
would you say
yourself.
that's physical safety and emotional safety? Because they're very
Absolutely.
different, but
Absolutely, because
they're
the
both
second
very important.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
second thing is that goes along with it is vulnerability. And so like I said, when you go home, you're gonna put down not only your weapons, but your armor, right? And so putting that and being able to take that armor off, and I think I took a lot of armor off just here with the people who are going to be listening to this, and they'd be like, "Whoa," and a little bit, and like writing this book was a little bit vulnerable too, and maybe we'll get to that. But the idea of like getting home and being able to be vulnerable with your partner, and also for them to be able to be vulnerable with you as well. And so for me, I've always been in touch with, and again, we'll just say like post divorce, more and even more in touch with my sensitive side, my divine masculine side. And so I've met women along this, we'll say, post-marital journey, because I was with that partner for my my young, from 20 until 35, okay? Monogamous relationship. And then with, then now as an adult, 35 plus, um, traversing relationships and being told by, you know, I don't have enough fingers, that I was the most sensitive guy that they've ever met. Or one partner said to me, "Wow, you're even more sensitive than me," and I was like, "Well, is that an okay thing?" Or by someone that I went on a date with, they're like, "Wow, you're not who I expected you to be, because we do judge books by their cover. And I was like, well, what did you expect me to be? Well, just like some punk guy or something, and you know, just maybe a one night stand type of situation. And she was like, no, I just didn't expect you to be like who you were. And so, being vulnerable in a relationship, it does go both ways. And so I found as a divine masculine that it's not easy. It's not easy to be in touch with that sensitive side, because it and being vulnerable, it leaves you open to hurt. It leaves you like that empathicness. It leaves you open to really stuff hitting. And when it's the person you adore,
Mm.
and it hurts even more. And so, that would be number 2. And I think number 3, it's really truly, um, like, learning to not just understand each other in a relationship, but growing together. Like, realizing that like I said, like, this like that second divorce, so to speak. It was a 4+ year relationship that these, um like, I feel in a way, like I was just tagging along while, like, another universe was being created that I kind of didn't see. And then I looked and I was like, whoa, like it's still going without me, right? And I feel like that the reason I think that kind of happened in a way was partly, again, like 50% contribution, is that there was a keeping score that started happening. And I think that love, as that Corinthians, um you know love is patient, love is kind, love doesn't keep score either. And so when you start looking at that, you kind of start setting up the straw man to be knocked down, when love is supposed to be, and should be, and true love is unconditional. And so that, that growing together, like how can we grow together? So we're growing each individually, right? Trying to be the best human beings, in a sense, that we can, but also doing that together. And so, like, I found, like, I went on a retreat with my partner, and it was just a day, and it was a full day. It was like from 5 a.m. to, you know 5, 6 p.m. And it felt like a week, because it was like we were just there, and we were so focused on just the retreat and each other. And we got as much as I felt like I felt on any vacation that I went on,
Wow,
for 5 or 10 days.
amazing.
And and that's the thing. So growing together.
Nice. I love that. Dr. Paul, would you describe yourself as a man who is in touch with his heart?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, I think every empath would say that they wouldn't have it any other way. As much as I've been hurt, I wouldn't want to be in a place that I didn't feel those feelings, right? And that
Okay.
was the
Yeah.
yeah.
How I've got a couple of questions around this. One, how does a man get in touch with his heart who isn't in touch at the moment? And two, how does the masculine balance the heart and the mind, or integrate the heart and the mind to become the best version of himself?
Yeah,
Because from my understanding of the masculine, first it's all in the head, and then maybe they drop into the heart, and they shift in the other way, and then they find the balance of integration of the mind and the heart to bring in the full healthy divine masculinity. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
I totally do. I don't think there's any one right path or way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it starts with being honest with yourself, as I said earlier, and really truly, like stop hiding. You know, y- like you can hide behind working out. I mean, you could hide behind yoga too if you really wanted to. Um, at the end of the day, it really goes back to, what I tell my children and myself. I came from, shout out to my mother. It's like only you know whether you've worked as hard as you possibly can. Only you know if you're being honest with yourself and the world. And I think for me, I've always been as honest as I possibly could with the world. So, in those younger years, I was who I was, and I still am some of those things today, but I realized, like, oh, like I just didn't read enough books to understand how things actually worked, right? And how the world worked. And I
Yeah.
think so if somebody wants to grow, you start wherever you can. If you want to start in the mind, well, go read some books. And I think part of my earlier awakenings, I thankfully had a great friend that I reconnected with well over, I want to say, maybe about 5 to 7 years ago. But his late father, was my spiritual mentor, um, even when I wasn't friends with him,
Mm.
and just started reading some books that they suggested, getting
What are
into
your
the
favorite books? If a man's out there and he's like, okay, I want to read some books, there's so many out there, what would you
so many.
recommend?
I mean, I just adore Thich Nhat Hanh, as a spiritual mentor, in terms of, thinking about, like especially as, again, as a socialized male in our society, you know, we are kind of trained to be warriors, right? And I think lots of, right, there is this, masculine notion, and it is different in culture to culture, but that idea of what a man is supposed to be, and how, and then Thich Nhat Hanh says peace is every step, right, in one of his books, and thinking about being mindful for every step that you take.
Yeah.
And if we're thinking about every step we're taking, we're going to think about every word that we say. We're going to think about every look that we give someone. We're going to think about when we're driving. We're going to think about this as we're eating, right? That notion of mindfulness. So reading up on mindfulness, and getting into the mind through reading, and then you get in touch with yourself through meditation. And so, I know for me, like I meditate. It used to be I could only use, like, guided meditations helped me a lot, and then now I meditate in and around my yogic practice, and I find myself doing, a meditation by the water, or a seated meditation for 5 minutes, or even finding meditation when I'm, mowing the lawn, and that's like Zen and the art of, right? And so, you can get into that in your mind, or you can get it, like, again, in yoga too, or it started with me earlier in graduate school. I did a lot of Tai Chi. I was doing Tai Chi for a while, and got into Qigong, or Qigong, as it's called, and into the internal arts of breath work, and some of those things that are, all part of that, the yogic practice too, and just in a different way, shape, or form, in balancing your energy, and moving energy around. And so, you can get it in and around the physical aspect. So it's crucial to have it everywhere, right? And so in your mind, in your thoughts and intellectually, but also, physically and emotionally and spiritually too.
Is it difficult for the masculine to have an awareness of his body, of where feelings are? Because as the feminine, we're very attuned to, okay, I'm feeling this, and we can label an emotion, we can generally articulate it, we can feel where it is in our body. What do you, for the masculine, is that something that's quite difficult to comprehend? And do these practices that you mentioned start bringing that awareness in? And is it important on the masculine journey to be able to feel the physical body and the emotional body?
I I have to say, like, for me, I was always in touch with that because I spent like a lot more time with my mother than I did with my father, right? So I hid a lot of that sensitivity like out in the world, like pretended like that things don't bother me. And I think that's what guys typically do. But I think for some guys it's so, literally and figuratively beaten down and stuffed down that the it takes a while to break through and get those feelings to start to be able to feel again,
Yeah, yeah, it
right?
doesn't
And
happen overnight.
and that's what they say. They when you're dealing with, and I have a bachelor's in psychology, and I have a lot of friends who are psychotherapists and things, and so getting back to, well, where where did this like trauma response happen, or where are we conditioned, and we're conditioned to be that way. So that's kind of why I have a little bit of a different experience in the world as a man, because there wasn't that there there wasn't that point. And I tell my classes, I have this like little note that I was thankful that I wasn't introduced to sports earlier than high school. I think it happens sometimes there where, again, there's that hyper masculine socialization happens, especially in our culture there, and in other places. And I wasn't exposed to that until later on. And I had spent a lot of time with the feminine than I did with the masculine. So I think it comes down to um like, looking at yourself, looking at your, sociologically, looking at your socialization agents. Who did you learn and garner your identity from?
Yeah,
And
no,
so if you look there, then you can realize, well, where do I need to grow? So for me, like as a parent, like I I'm a fantastic nurturer. Like I, that's I think as a feminist, like I understand that, you know, like what like almost like what the ideal man is supposed to be. Like I always was. Um, but early on it was like I was being afraid to show it because like that's not what was applauded,
yeah,
and then being able to like come out of my shell and be like, yeah, this is just who I am, and I was just kind of like hiding. There was just
yeah,
a little veil, and that kind of Wizard of Oz, I think, moment, I think is really for all of us. Is it just a light veil, or is it like the iron curtain that needs to be busted through? And so I think for everyone, it may be working with a professional to try to get back to, well, where did you shut down, or where was that switch turned off for you?
yeah,
And did was there a trauma point, right? And I think that's like contemporarily, like what I'm working on is like understanding some of my own conditioned responses from and through relationships that I've had. And so it's like like something will happen or a situation, I'll be like, "Whoa, why do I suddenly feel bad
Mm.
about this?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, "Oh, I feel bad about this because it's not from this present relationship. I feel bad because it was something that was similar
Mhm.
in, like, it could just be some like my partner saying, "Oh, she's gonna be late," or something, right? And I'm like,
Mm.
"Oh, I feel like upset, and why am I upset at that small little thing?" And it was like, "Oh, well, that was years of, conditioning where I was being kind of, being hurt through some of those situations, and there were that
Yeah.
abrasion and that stress, that traumatic stress that
Mm.
continues. And those are just like little minor stressors and minor conditions. They play out
Yeah.
in the future. And so larger things that have happened to us and throughout our lives, and we have to really, that's that honesty, that's that vulnerability, that's that getting to, like, who you really are. And I think we all have, you know we all have it. We all are love, and we all can love, and we all have the capacity to love completely and unconditionally. And I think we're hiding, we're scared, and it's like facing that fear, and having courage to really truly be, and be honest.
Yeah, the self-awareness, it's really a journey of self-awareness, isn't it? Getting to know ourselves and why we do what we do, why we say what we say, why we hurt when we hurt. Dr. Paul, we're going to start wrapping up now. So there's two things that I'd like you to cover, please. One is, what have you got to say to any men out there who are maybe struggling and a bit lost on their path? And then at the end, well, you can show us your book, you can tell us where people can find you. So use the rest of the time to say whatever you'd like to say.
Oh, the idea of being lost. Are we really ever lost? Are we really ever off the path? I think if someone's listening to this, then you're on it. And it's like that, like getting closer to you, and doing things that honor yourself. And I feel like looking back at myself, like again, I was responsibly irresponsible. And I look at adults that are in their that are in their 30s and 40s and 50s. And again, I'm not making a judgment here, but they're they're acting like adolescents. And I'm kind of wowed by that. But they're also you know hurting inside, wondering why they're in so much pain, and why things aren't working out, and why they're not happy truly. And I can say that I am really happy with where I am, and what I've accomplished, and I've worked really hard to
Yeah,
to
good. Yeah,
do, and to make these emotional, physical, and social strides that I have in these achievements. And for whatever reason, I think it's just, where my father comes in, not, kind of learning what not to do in relationships, but also like the work ethic that I learned from that man. The man just doesn't stop
mm,
working. And so I learned that, like, that's where kind of my drive and my work ethic comes from, is like watching this man just constantly grind. And so I was saying from second grade that, I didn't want to do the physical work like my father was doing, because it's very harsh on your body. But I knew that I wanted to find intellectual slash white collar work. And I'm glad that the mentors along the way have put me where I can be in the position to be here with you to share some of these things. And so it's as we said before, like you're never off the path,
I like that.
and if you have breath left,
Yeah.
then you have time, and there
Mm.
is time.
I really like that. That's very powerful. You're never off the path. That's beautiful. Is there anything else you'd like to say before you share where people can find you?
Um, I I've said a lot. Think it's kind of like um, I think I've shouted out a lot of people, and there's just so many things. I think um, I'll shout out Jim Rohn. I have to shout out that guy because he's in the motivational kind of world, but he says some pretty profound things. He's like, I'll suggest a book to someone, but 10% of people are going to read it. And and so I thankfully, as an academic, like I'm a voracious reader. And as much as I like to binge Netflix, I'm also binging podcasts, and I'm binging books, and binging yoga and and sometimes binging on food, but with moderation, right? And so it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy life, and you can't enjoy some of the quote unquote guilty pleasures. And I don't like them being called guilty pleasures. I think you should enjoy life for what it is. Enjoy the piece of cake, enjoy the cupcake, enjoy the ice cream,
Yeah.
but not all the time.
Yeah.
And if you want to imbibe, then that's on you. And I'd rather eat my calories than drink them. That's how I live. I'm an
Yeah.
Epicurean, and so that's where I kind of spend some of my off the mat time is enjoying just the fine cuisines of the world, and the taste and the spices, because I think about the end, and I think that's what I think. What will we miss? We'll miss that taste, and we'll miss those embraces, and we'll miss those kisses if we're lucky enough. And that's I think I'll just that's a good transition to my book Spirals of Love. And I wrote this book. It wasn't intended to be a book. It was a um little musings and writings to my partner at the time. And then I ended up self-publishing it a couple of years later, after some push by some folks who read the stuff and were like, "Wow, it's just really moving." And one of the things that I thought about when I was publishing it, and I'll tell you one of the things I wasn't thinking about in a moment, but I was like, I'm so lucky, like unlucky that this relationship didn't make it, and my marriage didn't make it, but lucky enough to have had those relationships. And I know that some people aren't able to have those relationships, and
Mm.
and it could bring me to tears thinking that. So some of these musings about love, and about embrace, and about kisses, and about adoration, I was like, wow, I know that someone could read this and be able to feel some of that, even if they've never had the ability to
Mm.
physically feel it. And
Mhm.
so I didn't think about what I was publishing. Like I'm so vulnerable in a sense, like that here's my inner heart, boom, right? But now my present partner, I'm talking with her, and we start having kind of, we start becoming, romantic, and we had a longer courtship than I think I've ever had. And it was amazing, the story. But one she I was like, "Oh, I'll give you a copy of my book." She's like, I ordered it.
Oh.
She ordered it. And I was like, I never felt so vulnerable. I was like, whoa, she's reading this book and she's like looking into my most intimate space. And I didn't, it was until that moment, it didn't bother me that this thing was out in the world until this person that I cared about was reading it. And that it just hit me so hard. It was like, how far, like, how much have you read? Well, I'm about at a third of the way. I was like, wow, and it was just really a powerful thing. And so um that was really, really vulnerable. And so Broken Pottery was being written like before I had met this person. And so this was like obviously like the shattered vase and of the relationship and the coming back together as a a, a, a new person, that kintsugi and that rebuilding, that life after death, and or life after the death of a relationship. And again, a very similar thing in a different way than my divorce, because it was the divorce was abrupt, and this was kind of over a little bit of a period of time, but I was closer to myself and closer to my heart.
Yeah.
And so the typewriter was my savior. And so that's why there's some nods in this book to the uh kind of Christianity in a sense, and religion, with like deliverance and the quickening and like coming back to life. And when we have a big loss, it hits us so hard. And so some people will drink, or go out there and find ways to numb themselves. And so I just felt it all, and my typewriter got me through. And again, it wasn't really intended to be a book. It was therapy for me. And so it was an outlet for those really, really powerful emotions. And then coming out of it, through it, and then being able to kind of have this relationship where I didn't think I would ever write, like love poetry again, in a sense, when you lose something so significant. And that was that's kind of how the book ended, and that's kind of where I'm at now, in an incredibly um mindful, open, vulnerable um, relationship, and doing our best to relate and understand one another in the process. And again, at like all those suggestions that I made, like that's what I'm doing right now. That's what I'm practicing. And there's a book that I just read with my partner called the Go Giver Marriage, and I forget the authors offhand, but we'll put a link in um, the subject there down below. And it's a really, really a good, powerful read for folks to that might feel that separation, as we said earlier, and they want to come back together and read something together. And I find that is such a great practice. And so it's been tremendous time, and I hope to do it again.
Dr. Paul, let's finish now, please, with you reading. Would you like to read one of your poems? I'm getting the one on page 33 of Broken. Well, which book did you pick up?
I have Broken Pottery in my hands.
Page 33.
33. Oh, wow. The dark hope, the cloak of the night held on, seemingly longer than usual. The clouds hung low like a veil, attempting to hold back the sun. Dark gray forces fighting, despite the arrows of the Saturnine warriors. The light found a humble crack through which it was able to penetrate the shadows for a time. And yeah, right. That's the it gives me chills to think about what I was feeling in those moments, in such a dark space, in such a lonely space, in such a gloomy space. And there was that tiny little speck. And the tiny speck was the act of writing, right? And so I think sometimes, right, and when we're in that dark space, like I wanted to write exactly like how dark I was feeling, but the light was the typewriter. I was like, if I could get this out now, I'm not going to feel it here. It's going to be on the paper. And that was my light. That was me reaching for, like reaching for straws. And every day was just another straw that I was reaching for. Or as I say in another poem, it was like pulling these bricks off of my body. And that's kind of how it felt. Like every day I was just pulling another brick, but I was buried. I was buried in just this, this castle that, that had been destroyed around me. And I think that's like, some men coming out of their shell, as kind of has been some of the questions surrounding that. Like, let the light in, and don't be scared, and don't be scared to share your feelings with your partner. And if your partner is in a safe space, then find a safe space.
Yeah.
And I think that's, the counselors and those folks, or as I say in my book, like, you find a safe circle.
Yeah.
And those places and space,
Yeah,
lots
there's
of
plenty of
forums.
circles, around. Wow. And we can, I can put your, if you like, your website or contact Facebook links and everything in the description below. So Dr. Paul, that was amazing. Thank you so much. We covered a lot of ground there, both from your personal and professional experience. So I'm so honored to have you on the show. Thank you very much. And namaste.
Namaste. The honor and pleasure have been mine. Thank you so much.
Oh, so I'll wrap it up now, Paul. If you want to stay on, you can stay on. I'll just end the recording. So thanks, everyone. I'll be on again in a few days with another Heart Warrior.